All right, welcome everybody to our webinar this evening on getting the most out of young citizens differentiation to promote learning for all students. We are so glad to have you here with us this afternoon. I am your host, Jessica Hayes, and our presenter this afternoon is Melissa Knowles. Melissa has worked in education for 17 years. She earned her bachelor's degree in elementary education at the University of South Alabama, a master's degree in library science from the University of West Alabama in 2009, and her educational specialist degree from the University of West Alabama in 2010. She has earned several technology-related certifications and is currently working on a certification as a technology coach. In her work as a certified trainer for social studies school service, she builds curriculum maps, develops micro-credentials, and she trains educators on using the programs, as well as leads and hosts webinars on various topics. In her spare time, she loves spending time with her family, reading, and anything outdoors. I am now going to turn it over to Melissa.
Awesome, thank you. So welcome to our Young Citizens webinar series. Today we're going to talk about all the ways that young citizens can help you differentiate for your students' needs. Now, the nice thing about this is most of this is going to be embedded into the program and built in for you. So it's not going to be a lot of extra work on your part, which you'll see. But I do want to let you know that for this webinar, when I talk about differentiation, I am referring to those teaching techniques and lesson adaptations that we as educators use to instruct our diverse group of students with many different needs that are all housed in the same classroom and are expected to meet the same learning goals. So let's go ahead and look at our goal for today. So our goal for the session today is to become acquainted, as I said, with some of the young citizens, some of the ways that young citizens can meet the needs of your diverse population. So we're going to look about ways that we can deliver, that instruction can be delivered differently to students, the design of the lesson and what students are doing in the lesson, maybe the work that they're producing, the content that they are interacting with, those assessment measures that we need to do to differentiate, like the formative assessments are built in through young citizens. And of course, groupings, different kind of groupings that we can do for differentiation. Let's look here. I went ahead and created this slide, I think a little bit last minute, because I wanted you to just get a little snapshot of what Young Citizens is going to offer you. Let me move this out of the way there. Okay, so in practice, or how we're delivering instruction, the lessons include a modification and extension portion, and there are both physical and digital resources that are available to help with differentiation. And please know that you guys may find other ways that differentiation can occur using young citizens. So for the process, or how we're delivering our instruction to students, we can use those modifications and extensions in our activities. There are also hands-on components for the students to hold, touch, move, manipulate, and group activity cards. And then there's also a digital read to tool, which Social Studies Service is well known for, and it's in all of their products, and I'm so glad they included it in Young Citizens. But also the product, what students are having to do and produce, can be differentiated in any activity using the leveled reader pre and post activities and those group activity cards. The content can be changed, again, using those modifications and extensions that are suggested at the end of each activity with each project that the students do. There's also the leveled readers, group activity cards, and the projects that can, where you can modify content. Then those formative assessments. Those assessments are going to be before the activity, during the activity, and when the activity ends. And of course, there is an end of lesson or an end of chapter test. And then the project is a good way to assess also, because that's where the students are putting their learning into action. And then grouping can be found in any activity, leveled reader pre and post activities, the leveled readers themselves, and those group activity cards. So let's get going on our journey. I wanted to start with the people from Maplewood. So these friends are in Maplewood. They're going to be traveling through, right now, Young Citizens is K through 5. So they're going to be there with you, with your students throughout all of those grade levels. And they provide a really unique way. So they are a part of the narrative, which is comic-based. So the students are engaging with them as they're learning. They get to know the characters and their situations and things that happen to them all the way across. They're also not only in the physical product, they're going to be seen in the digital product. So the students can go from the different models very easily. So let's take a look at some of the unique characteristics and backgrounds of these characters. So Carlos, he's our first guy there, and his family came from Honduras, and he loves sports. Peyton's family is divorced, and he has a new step family, and he loves computers and skateboarding. Lena loves animals, and she lives with her mom, who's a police officer. She also loves music and reading, and her family came from China, but she was born here. Ninar, her family's from Egypt, and she loves science and seeing how things work, and she has her extended family living in her home with her, so her grandmother lives with her. Now Roger has a new baby sister and loves video games and sports. So you can see that your students are going to relate to these characters, and I do think of it as another way that is differentiated, because they can learn through their situations, like having a new baby or a step family, or someone else live with you, or different things that happen with them all throughout the book. I love our friends, and we're going to take a look a little bit more closely at them in the digital platform. So let's start with the leveled readers. The leveled readers we have 4 levels. So you've got your emerging, approaching, on level, and beyond. Now each book has the same content. The difference you're going to see is going to be in the information included and the vocabulary words. Sometimes there will be a little bit difference in the vocabulary. But Young Citizens has the pre and post activities. Now those are the same for any level. So no student is left out. They are participating with the learning, with the grouping, with all of the discussions directly, no matter what level they are in. The levels really, to some extent, your students may not even know they're on a different level. The covers are the same. They look the same. How it's denoted is by a little line in the upper outside cover of the book. So when they get together, they're still doing the same things. They may not even know that they're on a different level. Now, the books can be changed easily in class. You know, you just reorganize your groups or change the levels as students grow, or as they may need a little extra support, or maybe you want to build some more confidence in your students, so you lower their level a little bit for a while. But it's really easy to change levels both virtually and in person in the classroom as your needs and your students' needs change. I want to take a look at that in just a little bit and just show you exactly how easy that is in Young Citizens. But first, I want you to see the difference in the levels. So I've got a slide here with 4 pictures. So this is all the same book. It's a 2nd grade level reader. What do you notice? Put it in the chat, anything that's the same or different about these levels. So I'm sure you can tell that they go from lowest to highest. So anything that you notice in there on those books?
Kathleen says text amount.
Definitely. The text amount is different. It changes, in fact, greatly. That was one reason that I said they may or may not know. If they saw the book inside, they may have some idea, especially the difference from the lowest level to the highest. I think it's interesting that the pictures are exactly the same, but the size changes. They get smaller. And then think about it, talking bubble is the same. Is there anything else you guys noticed on there? The vocabulary word typewriters, that's going to be the same throughout the book. So I thought this was a really so you can see that you're going to be able to cover all ranges of your students, from your ELs, your below level, to your higher levels, using these leveled texts. Nobody's left out. And the pre and post activities. Every book and chapter in Young Citizens has an inquiry question. So this book, The Late 20th Century, has a guiding question: what was life like? So the students know automatically what they're going to learn as they read throughout the book. So on the inside front cover, you've got your pre-reading activity. So on here, they're going to take a look at the timeline and find out what words appear more than once. Now, even though these activities are the same for your students, you can easily differentiate these. So an easy way would be to pair up students or group students, maybe tell them, I want you to find one or two words that are different, so that the task is a little bit less daunting for students who may struggle. So you can break it up sort of into chunks. Or you can do a little releasing of control. So you could model, put them in groups, pairs, and then have them work individually once they have a strong understanding of what they're expected to do. And then at the end of the book, you can see the glossary there, but there's also post-reading activities. So you've got a reading comprehension activity on identifying key details using graphic organizer. They're also going to be working with primary sources and then communicating their results in these post-reading activities. So those can be also some great relearning or extending activities for your students to do. And also you have that lovely group grouping that really helps with your students' differentiation. So let's take a look really quickly at how you would change a level on the digital platform. So the first thing you're going to do, I went ahead and put yc.socialstudies.com, which is our digital platform for young citizens. Once you've logged in, on the left-hand side, you're just going to go to Manage Students, and you can see that person icon right there. Then in the middle top, once that page opens, you're going to select the students. Select the students that you want to change. Now you're going to select only the students you want to change to the same level. So I've selected student number 2, who's currently on emerging. Then you're going to choose your new level. This student is going from emerging to beyond. Awesome. And click Save. And then you can see that the student's level has been saved there. So that's really how easy it is. Now in the digital platform, when your student goes to Lena, our character who houses the library, and they access their leveled readers, that student number 2 will now only see the beyond level readers. So this is in a teacher's view. So I just want to show you one little difference here, especially for when we're teaching virtually. This is a really good resource to have, because you as a teacher can use this drop down on the left under Lena's picture, and you can choose any of the levels. So if you're presenting it, you may want to present on a different level or highlight some content that may be in a higher level, but you support your students through it. So you can choose whatever level you want. Another thing that I truly love, as I talked about earlier, is that Read To tool. So you can see, and this is the students have this on their student view, but this is in the teacher account, you can also see what the students see, which is great for planning. But there's a little play button, and when that is selected, the text will be read to them. So let me click over here really quickly. So not only does the library and the leveled readers have that Read To tool, but so is it in the activities, the student book, the Patriots Handbook, and the Atlas. So we've embedded that support throughout for students. So I wanted to, let me see if I can change this really quickly. Here. Okay. Jessica, do you see the Young Citizens website now?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to double check before I talk about it and it's not there. Okay, so I wanted to just show you really quickly what it looks like when you click the Read To tool. And I was hungry, so I chose the book that's titled Story of a Taco Dinner. So when you click that Read Aloud tool.
It's taco night. Let's find out how that yummy dinner gets to your plate. Taco shells. Some taco shells are soft. Those are often made from flour tortillas. Many Americans love the crunchy kind, which are made from fried corn tortillas. More than...
Okay, I was hoping that it would switch to the caption, but it does also read, so you see the little caption at the map. It would also read that, and it would read the cultural connections. So it really is a great tool, and you saw how it highlights as it's reading, so the students can do tracking and get some more practice with visualizing the word with the sound of the word as they're reading. So it's a really great tool for all levels of students. So let me go back now to this. I may have to adjust it. Sorry about that. Oh, there. Good. Yay. All right. Jessica, you see the PowerPoint now?
Yes, it's a little bit
wonky, but yeah, it was giving me a little slow glitch. Is that better? Move it over.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So one of the other resources, so when you get Young Citizens, the program, another resource that is available that comes with it are the group activity cards. So these are great for centers and small groups. And they give students reading, primary source activities, just all kinds of different types of activities to work through. Maybe they're drawing, but they also are a great tool to use grouping. And then they include group roles. Some of the group roles that students have access to in using the cards are the reader, writer, a drawing role, acting, and collaborating. Now, just because they're a reader doesn't mean they do all the reading, but they are managing that. So they can split it up into groups, they can split up the reading, or just do it different ways. So I love that group role concept for differentiation because everybody has a task. Your students that maybe aren't as comfortable in certain areas, they are still a part of the learning because they have a job and a role to do in this activity. So some students at my school, I can just give them the card and let them go with it. But some I have to give a little bit more support to. So we'll talk about it a little bit more before I send them on their way. So that's another just way to make sure that your students are understanding and grasping the group activity cards without much extra effort on your part. Really, everything is there. You can also do some strategic grouping to make sure that all students are engaging with the activities as far as maybe putting certain students together, that work together, or maybe certain students to support others. Maybe they are a little bit better at reading or managing. You always have that other teacher kid in your classroom, right? So, and that it may be a good idea to just strategically group using these cards too, but they come with every chapter. So every chapter has a group activity card and they have 2 sides. So they're really great resources and so much fun for the students to do. Now, we talked about the hands-on resource. So, Young Citizens encourages students to take the learning into their hands, literally. All of these resources help make those abstract concepts in social studies tangible and concrete for students. So instead of just teaching them about that Africa is to the west of South America, they can take their pen, their marker tool, it's actually a real marker, and draw a line west to Africa and see, draw a line east, what do you hit? The students really are encouraged to engage with these, and they're embedded and used through the units, but they can also be used as a differentiating support for your students. So they are all writable. You can write on, wipe off, do it again and again and again, and it's great. They're beautifully colored and bold. They're also created to be grade level appropriate for your students. So you'll have different features on different globes for grade levels. So obviously there's less on a kindergarten globe than there would be on a 4th grade globe. But really there's a difference every grade level. But they are grade level appropriate and research based. The maps are awesome too because they are pretty large maps. They are double-sided, nice thick laminating. Also, you can write on it and wipe off. There's even raised relief maps that the kids like to call bumpy maps, so they can feel the differences in the terrain. They can see how water moves through mountains. So it's not only that you're talking about it, reading about it, but you can also see and engage and work with those concepts with your students. Another thing in our time of COVID, they are incredibly easy to clean. So using a disinfectant to clean them is not going to harm the products. So that's awesome. Another thing that is encouraged in Young Citizens is to use a think book, and so it's used throughout. And now it can be as simple as a journal, a composition book, stapling paper together, but it's a way for students to collect and organize their notes, pictures, images. There are pictorial vocabulary cards that come with Young Citizens, so they could put those in there, especially for your EL students. That would be a great tool to have just taped into their think book. They can use drawings, they can write down their thoughts, put all those notes in that they use. So I love this tool because it really can be whatever your students need it to be. If there's something that they're struggling with, add it in there. So then they have that for a resource when they're studying for their test, or sometimes even maybe they need the compass rose, an image of the compass rose while they're doing an activity. And they could have it there in their think books. They could take it along with them in their learning. Okay. Now let's get into the lessons. So every chapter starts with a letter home, and I do consider this a differentiation tool because it's going to give not only you more ideas, but it gives ideas for ways that parents can help their students. And so simple things like taking a walk or talking about something while you're cooking, or, different ways. And sometimes, you may give this sheet to parents and they're not even going to look at it. But if you ask them to do a task, they're much more likely to actually follow through with that, I hope. Also in the bottom, it has notes on preparing for the chapter project, which ends every chapter. The Young Citizens does follow the C3 framework. So as I said, every chapter starts with an inquiry question or a D1 and ends with a D4, putting their learning into action and having them create something. Students also get a checklist so they know exactly what is expected of them in their assignment, which can definitely help students that struggle. They need to know exactly what is expected of them and what it should look like. So there's also a rubric. Assessments are so important, as we said earlier. You've got to know where your kids are to know how they need help or where they need help in what areas. So assessments are built throughout the lesson. The chapter starts with a pre-assessment, which right here is as simple as a mapping activity. So initially you're going to know what are your students bringing to this chapter. Then when you get into the lesson, this is just the top of one of the activities in the lesson. So every lesson has activities that go with it. So this is activity B. Vocabulary is not just seen and let go. We are reviewing vocabulary throughout in context. So in this activity, they're going to be talking about estimating, and they're going to bring in or revisit estimating populations. So they're bringing back the vocabulary word population. Notice also at the top of the page where you have the history, critical thinking, information processing. Some ways to differentiate are with the students' learning styles. So in each lesson and throughout, even on the activity cards, you're going to see things related to art or little icons like this history one, art, geography, music, you singing songs, doing all kinds of different things to help students learn and engage in their way. So at the end of an activity, you're going to get a summarizing and assessing section. And you can see here, these are super easy to do. Raise hands if it's true or false. Maybe you do it as an exit ticket. In the second example, they're using their think books to write their own questions about natural features. So this is a really neat, and I've spanned 2 different grade levels in these 2 activities, but it's a really good way to take a quick check of whether they understood. Of course, also throughout the lesson, you're going to know what are they having trouble with, where are they struggling. But when you get here, you've got another real quick check, and that would be an easy Google form or an easy assessment to do virtually also. As I said, every activity ends with modifications for differentiation. You're going to have your above modifications, your below, and you can see that they are simple, easy things to assign to your students. So you can see in the below suggestion that they may have trouble with their idea webs in the think books. One of my favorite suggestions that I've seen so far, I think, was in one of the comic strips. They were talking about neighbors, and there was usually we talk about your neighbors, the person sitting next to you, and then the neighbors that live around you. Well, in the comic, there was a different use of neighbors, and it suggested to make sure students are not getting confused with that. So it's these things that, oh yeah, somebody would have probably gotten confused with that, and you would have come up with that on your own, but the depth of thinking in what students may struggle with in these young citizens activities is really great because it's taking a lot of that off of you. And then there's also ELL modifications, and of course you can use the below and ELL modifications together because sometimes they're the same because of the support it offers, like drawing a picture and writing captions for the vocabulary words. And then there's also extension activities. So students' interest, maybe they really enjoyed the population activity and estimating the population and want to know more about the population of their town or state. So you can sort of gauge students' interest with some of these extension activities. But again, I think most of the lessons have about 3 activities. So you're getting a lot of modification ideas and extension ideas throughout the series. Now, after you complete all of the activities in a lesson, there's a lesson closure. So again, there is another assessment. Do they know what they needed to know? So you can check these real quick, true and false. You can do thumbs up, thumbs down. You can do the stamping tool in Zoom and have true, false, and have them, you know, put their answers in there. Just so many different ways to do this, but it's super quick. It would not take you long to get that assessment from your students and to know where they're at. And then, of course, it ends with that Chapter 2 project. This one is about using your local newspaper, and it's a 3-day project. Now, these are great because it allows students to apply. So not every student is good at maybe reading or good at test taking, answering questions, but some students can really get out there and do a project and work through that mindset. It always interests me that some students and what they're really good at. This program really gives students a place to shine and to have a niche in something that they can be sort of the expert at, as we use in my classes. So we are almost out of time, and I just want to show you really quickly, I think we have enough time to look at the digital platform and assigning work. This is another tool for differentiation. So when you go to activities, you would choose an activity. So again, we're back in grade 2. The I allows you to view the activity, so you can choose, is it something that you think your students will want to do or that you want to do with your students? Then you can click on the person to assign it, or the star to favorite if something you want to use year after year. But here's where the magic happens. And because I'm using this presenter mode, my animations are not going there, but that's okay because I want you to see the ways that you can differentiate in here. You can, at the top, you've got personalize your instructions. So you can tell the students, you could have different instructions for different groups. So maybe some you want to do 5 very important points you want them to highlight, or maybe some you only want to do 3. You can also choose what part of the activity to assign. So this activity only has 1 part, but if it had multiple parts, maybe you want some students to go revisit making a timeline. You could just choose that part for those students before they move on to analyzing timelines. Then you also can choose who gets the assignment. You can send it to a whole class, to particular students, or to groups in your classroom. And then the other tool here that you can see, which I love, is the Customize Highlights tool. And I did a little pop-up of what it would look like if you clicked that blue button there. So here you can choose your own highlights. You could have them compare and contrast. You can have them highlight vocabulary words and then annotate by writing their own vocabulary definition for that word. But of course there's main idea. You could do, there's lots of different colors too, by the way. One suggestion was to do pink and do love this. So maybe something they just really thought was interesting. Maybe you could have them highlight things they still have questions about and don't understand. And then when they turn that in, you will see what they've highlighted, and maybe even before they turn it in. But you can see what they've highlighted and what they've asked, and you can go ahead and respond back with them. And that will be denoted, so they'll know that you've responded back with them because there's a bell by their annotation or their highlight. So it's really a great tool, not only for differentiating, but also communicating together. So maybe you're a little bit off on this. Why did you think this? You could ask, why did you choose this one? And maybe they have a really good idea that you didn't think of. You know, you can really just have that conversation. No one else sees it. So it's a good tool to use for your students. All right, so that was all I have today. If you want to know more about Young Citizens, you're welcome to contact Pam Gothart, pgothart@socialstudies.com. If you have more questions, please feel free to reach out. If you have or want to know other ways to maybe meet a particular group's need, please let us know. I know this program does come in Spanish, so hopefully it will meet all your students' needs. But I love that there's very little in here that you have to do that's really outside, grouping or breaking something smaller. But really all those measures are built in. So I think that's really a great feature in Young Citizens, and it was a very well thought out program.
Thank you, Melissa. This was really great and informative. I love it. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks.